welcome back for another day of the Civil War. So today we're going to be doing pages 143 to 146, okay? We're going to be talking about the election of 1860, the president who won, the contestants, it's not a beauty contest, I'm sorry, the candidates, okay? We're going to be talking about the secession. We're going to be talking about the different thoughts of secession. We're going to be talking about the beginning of the Civil War, which happens April 12th of 1861 with the firing on Fort Sumter and the surrender thereof. All right, so we have a ton to cover because your chapter is cram-packed for each lesson. It's amazing to me. I think we could probably spend like a month on this chapter alone, but we don't have a month left. So we're going to get it done in our 3 weeks that we have left, and we'll be off, okay? All right, here we go. All right, so the election of 1860 was basically divided into two sectional races, the northern section and the southern section. So in the northern section, you had Abraham Lincoln, who was running as a Republican. Here, let me turn you a little bit more this way. Okay, hi. So you can see it better. Abraham Lincoln, who was running as a Republican in the north, and you have Stephen Douglas, who was running as a Democrat in the north. Okay. Then in the south, you had remember I said they're both named John. So you have John Bell, who is running as a Constitutional Union Party candidate. Now, you always have these third party, they're called third party because they're not major, third party candidates, sorry. Every year you have them, you always have, but they never win the presidency, which is what I said. So this year it's John Bell, and he's running under the Constitutional Union for the South, and you have John Breckinridge, who is running for the Democrats in the South. So the Democrats have kind of split their vote between the northern and the southern Democrats. I don't really understand that because, as you'll see, Stephen Douglas was for slavery wherever, because remember, he was the one who pushed forth the Kansas-Nebraska Act, all right? So he supports slavery everywhere. All right, so let's look at these candidates a little bit closer. Some we have a lot of information on and some we don't. So the first one that we're going to talk about is Stephen Douglas. Stephen Douglas was the northern Democrat candidate, which I already said, and he was the first presidential candidate ever in the history of the presidency to run what's called a national campaign. That's what all presidents do nowadays. They go all over the entire nation and they say, vote for me because, vote for me because, vote for me because. And hopefully they have good things to say about what they'll do and not because, hey, I'm better than the other guy, okay? So people who just say, hey, I'm better than the other guy, you gotta wonder, do you have any ideas or are you just trying to, run as better than the other guy? So Stephen Douglas went around and told people his ideas, his thoughts, what he was going to do, okay? And he did it nationally. He even went into the South, even though he did not feel he would probably get any votes in the South. He decided that he should go there anyway, all right? And he did get a few votes in the South. All right, Stephen Douglas lived in Illinois. Remember, he is a congressman from Illinois. And he did not oppose slavery. He believed in the state's right to choose, which we talked about and which is in the, you guessed it, Kansas-Nebraska Act. Okay? All right, then we have Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky. He grew up in Indiana, and then he moved to Illinois when he was an older, well, not like older, but when he got older, like in his 20s, not like 60s or something, okay? So he doesn't even live to 60, in case you're wondering. All right, so he grew and he was opposed to the spread of slavery, but all through his campaign, he said the Constitution guaranteed the right to slavery, and he was not going to change anything. Okay? But you'll see later that didn't make them super happy. Again, he's a Republican, like I said. He was a lawyer. He was a member of Congress in Illinois. In fact, he was the only member of Congress that when Polk wanted to go to war with Mexico, Lincoln stood up and said, no, this is not a just war. You can't, stop supplies from coming to people and then be shocked when they shoot at you. So he felt that it was an unjust war, but he was like a lone voice in the wilderness. All right, John Breckinridge. John Breckinridge was a Southern Democrat. He was from Kentucky, and he supported slavery throughout the entire nation. He thought that wherever people wanted to own slaves, they should be able to. Whether the state had a law about it or not did not matter to him. He just wanted to be able to freely have slavery. Okay, that was his thing. Yeah. And then there is John Bell. John Bell was from Tennessee, and he was part of the Constitutional Union Party, and that's like literally all the book talked about him. I thought that was pretty interesting that they didn't really talk much about him. Okay? All right. So all of these men, Douglas, Lincoln, Breckinridge, and Bell, all were hoping to keep the Union together. No Civil War, no war of any kind. They were trying to keep it together by doing nothing about the issue of slavery. Okay? A lot of people say things like, oh, Lincoln always said he was going to get rid of slavery. No, he didn't. He never said that. He said he didn't want it to spread to the territories, but he never said, hey, I'm going to get rid of slavery. That was a thing that happened later. Okay? Douglas wasn't going to change anything, Breckinridge and Bell, because their whole goal in life was to keep the Union together. That was really what they were trying to do, which is how we get into this mess to begin with, because everybody just tries to keep the Union together and does not deal with the issue of slavery. All right? So let's go on to our next page, which is over here. That one's all done. I know, I think I'm just writing more because literally we're only like 7 minutes in and I'm on a second page, and like I never did second pages before. So I think I'm just writing more of my notes on the board instead of just keeping them in my notes. All right? And still I will probably miss things. All right. So let's go to the actual election of 1860. So what happens is that President Lincoln wins the election, but he only wins barely over 40% of the vote, okay? So the reason he wins as president is because of the Electoral College, okay? So a lot of people talk about getting rid of the Electoral College because the person who gets the most votes doesn't necessarily always become president, which is true, but it's only happened like 4 times in history. I think it's 4. I know it was with the 2000 election, the 2016 election, and then there were more elections further in history because I actually looked it up with the 2000 election when that happened, and I can't remember when, but it's happened before, okay? So the reason that he won was because more people lived in the North, so the northern states had more electoral college votes. So the states he won more, okay? He was the very first president ever to win by only winning part of the country. So the only states that he won the electoral votes for was the North. He didn't win any in the South, okay? None. That doesn't mean nobody voted for him in the South, but it means he did not win like the state of Texas, so he did not get the electoral college votes from Texas. It could be that nobody voted for him in the South, but he didn't get any electoral college votes, no matter how that works, okay? So he won the election in 1860, but remember, that's not when you actually become the president. That's not when you're actually sworn into the presidency. That used to happen in March, Okay, it was in the Constitution. We actually since then made an amendment to the Constitution, so now it happens in January, but still not the same year you're elected. Okay, so Lincoln wasn't actually sworn in until March 4th of 1861, but look at the chaos that occurs even before he becomes elected. So let me just double check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, yes, it's up there though. Okay, so this election of 1860 was critical to American politics and critical to America at the time. So one thing it did was it totally shattered the Democratic Party's stance or not stance. I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Their reputation, okay, of being America's party, of being the national party. All right. People like Andrew Jackson, yes, were from the Democratic Party. James Buchanan, who's the president at the time of the 1860 election, he's from the Democratic Party. So they kind of felt that they were the nation's party. And so this election of electing a Republican, again, they're a very young political party at this time, is devastating to them. Okay, almost as devastating as the 2016 elections were to the Democratic Party. They just feel very upset about it. All right. It was also the first step toward the Civil War, is what the book says. But remember, we talked about historians saying, really, that occurred with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. That was really like the first step. And this is more, like maybe the third step. I would say, me studying history, and I'm not a historian, okay, I don't have letters after my name or anything, but as I study history, I think the first step was way further back when we would not deal with it at the beginning and the foundation of our country, okay, and the fact that we just kept not dealing with it, all right. This is closer to the Civil War than the other steps, but I think as we keep pushing it on to someone else and don't deal with the problem, that those were actually the first and second and third steps. You can decide what you think, okay? All right, so the South, oh man, they are so unhappy. They are fit to be tied that this Northern Republican guy got into office. They're really scared of him. Okay. Even though they knew President Lincoln said, yeah, I'm not going to change anything, and that the Constitution protected their right to slavery, they did not trust him. Not because of him necessarily, but because he was a Republican. Now, the reason they didn't trust Republicans is because Republicans refused to obey the Slave Fugitive Act. They would not return the runaway slaves, okay? So, because remember, Republican Party, the people who are in it, who identify as Republicans, are against slavery. So the South did not trust that Lincoln would keep his word since they weren't returning the slaves like they were supposed to. So that was something that they felt was a problem. And so because they couldn't trust them in that piece, they didn't feel they could trust Abraham Lincoln when he said, I'm not getting rid of it, I just don't want it to spread. All right, which again, there's the Kansas-Nebraska Act. He couldn't really do anything about the spread because the president isn't allowed to make laws. They're only allowed to enforce the laws that Congress makes. All right. All right. They felt that this election, the outcome of it, was the end of their way of life. Remember, their economy, their social structure is all built on having slaves. So they felt that as a Republican, he was going to come in, he was going to get rid of slavery, and it would destroy their way of life. They could not figure out how they were going to live, make a living, sell things, pull in the crops without slaves. So they were super duper upset and scared, which then made them react dramatically and quickly. So on December 20th, 1860, he was elected in November, in 1 month. December 20th, 1860, South Carolina secedes. Okay? They go, bye, we're out of here. See ya around. We are no longer part of the United States of America. We are our own state. Now, fun fact, South Carolina went to other southern states who held slaves and go, please join us, come on, you want to join us, you know you do. And they lobbied for other states to secede. Within a few months, several had. Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas had all seceded from the Union. Some of the other states, like Virginia, you notice Virginia's not up here, yeah, they were kind of sitting and waiting to see what is going to happen. Okay? Are things going to escalate? What's going to happen? Do we go? Do we stay? So they did not leave right away. All right, so these states, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they rename themselves. They call themselves the Confederate States of America. Okay? They set up a new capital. They bring in a new president. Jefferson Davis is his name. His picture's over there because that's the test wall right now. And they set up a totally different government in Richmond, Virginia. That is their capital, which is very close to Washington, D.C., like very close to Washington, D.C. And they begin to rule themselves, which James Buchanan, President James Buchanan at the time says, hey guys, this is illegal, but he doesn't actually do anything about it. He doesn't go and stop them. He doesn't say, hey, you need to come back. He doesn't send troops. He just is like, you know what? This is what I think. I don't know what really happened, but I think he said, I am almost done with my presidency. I am not dealing with this mess that's a-coming. That's what I think he probably thought, which seems reasonable. You know, he's going to be gone in March. So why stir the pot in December? I don't know. But that's what happened. So secession was not a new idea or thought. There's actually an entire history of secession with not only southern states but northern states. My back is starting to bug me a little bit, so I'm going to sit down. Thanks. Okay. Oh, hit the wall. That's not good. All right. So I'm going to tip you down a little bit too. So the camera. Oh, hello. You almost tipped over. I have you on this like stand kind of thing. And sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it just goes, I don't want to do this anymore. It gets tired. I don't know, but it's not a human, so I don't know how it can. I know, I ramble. I miss you guys. I get like no feedback. All right, secession. So a lot of them felt, hey, I joined this union voluntarily and I can leave voluntarily. So I'm going to read you about the secession history because I already filled up 2 papers. I didn't want to keep going with more. All right. So at various times in history, various states talked about secession. Okay. For different reasons. Both the North and the South, which I already talked to you about. Okay. So each state voluntarily joined the Union, so they should be allowed to leave at any time was their thinking. They joined for the Union for the purpose of guiding foreign relations and easing relations between the states. So before they all joined the Union, like each state printed its own money. So if you were living in, say, Massachusetts, and you went to New Hampshire because you were visiting your sister, okay, and you wanted to buy something, you had to change your money, all right? And foreign relations, they mean like if they join together, they're more powerful against, say, if Britain wants to come back and try to take them over again, they'd be more powerful if they join together. So those are the reasons that some of the states decided to join the Union, all right? They felt, though, that they retained all of their other rights and authorities and did not surrender their sovereignty. So to be sovereign means to be independent and of your own. Okay, so they did not feel like they gave up their rights as a state to the federal government. They felt like they could still run their state, which is why they were arguing about some of the federal laws, like the Fugitive Slave Act, okay, and the Missouri Compromise. That's why they were upset about some of these laws, because they felt they were giving up their freedom. That's what they thought. All right. So the opposing view, okay, so that was some of the states felt that way. That's what South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas felt. All right, later to be joined by Virginia, North and South Carolina. North Carolina, because South Carolina led it. And I can't think of who else. Sorry. All right. Oh, Missouri. No, Missouri never does. I can't think of the other one, and I should stop just talking, because then you'll get mixed up in your head. I'm sorry. No. So the other people, okay, and this is the idea that Abraham Lincoln came up with as well, which is why he sent troops later when he becomes president, was that Article 5 of the Constitution does not recognize the states as independently sovereign to amend the Constitution. So it did not see them as individual powers that could just change the Constitution as they felt like it, because Article 5 did not recognize that. They objected to any amendment. Okay, I'm sorry. The object to any amendment was to follow what it means in Article 5. So in ratifying the Constitution, which means they signed that their state accepted the Constitution. Remember, that's way back in the beginning of our country when we got free of Britain through the Revolutionary War. And then we had our first Constitution, which was a mess. And then the second Constitution, that's what they're talking about. Everybody signed saying, yeah, I'm on board. Yes, I'm going to join. Yay, I get to be part of the group. Okay, so they did that, and they didn't, have the ability to ever undo it. Okay, some historians say if they knew they couldn't undo it, some of the states would not have signed, especially the southern states, because they've been fighting about the slavery thing since literally the beginning of our country. Okay, all right, so they felt that since they signed it, they gave up the privilege of saying, I'm not doing it anymore, because they gave up certain privileges, such as making money, which we talked about, entering into treaties. So like California, well, we don't have California at this time. Let's say Florida can't say, hey, France, I want to do a treaty with you. Okay, they couldn't do that. It had to be through the federal government. So what they're saying is you gave up these rights to create a standing army, to declare war, to that you also gave up your right to be your own country ever again. Okay? Many states were created out of territories. All right? In the beginning, there was only the 13 original states, right? And everything else was territories. And the federal government owned the territories. They bought the land, right? Thomas Jefferson bought Louisiana Purchase. He bought all the territory covered under Louisiana Purchase. So they're saying states can't just decide they're leaving when they are in government land to begin with. All right. So this was an issue. This was a fight. This was a difference in philosophy, a difference in worldview. South Carolina's worldview was, hey, I voluntarily said I'm going to be part of it, and I'm voluntarily leaving, along with Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, joined later by North Carolina and Virginia. Okay? Two of the states that I can think of off the top of my head. Those states all said, nah, we joined freely, we're leaving freely. Okay? And so the tensions were high because they've always been high when it comes to slavery, and they just kept increasing. And all it needed was some little thing to just ignite it. Okay. Have you ever heard the expression, the straw that broke the camel's back? So all these things are piling up on the camel, is the idea. And then it can't handle any more, not even one more straw. And somebody puts one straw on there and the camel just tumbles. That's the idea. So that's how it was in the United States. All these things are piling up, piling up, piling up, and the United States can't do one more thing or it's going to break into war. And that one more thing is Fort Sumter. Okay, so here we go. Fun facts. So, fun facts. There were federal forts that were owned. So when we say federal, we're talking about the United States. Okay, that were owned, that were run, that were done in the now Confederate States. Okay, and so they were trying to decide what to do about that. And they were going to start emptying them of the Union troops, of the federal troops. And what happens is that the South doesn't see them doing that quickly, or at all, actually. And so they're concerned that the North is going to attack them. And they get frustrated and angry with the North and want all of the forts closed. Okay? So, Fort Sumter, what happens is that Fort Sumter is in the Charleston Harbor off of the coast of South Carolina. Okay? Actually, there used to be a Navy base there in the 80s and the 90s, yeah. And so they were running out of supplies at this fort, and they needed food, and they needed help. And so the president is now the president, yeah, March 4th. This is in April. The fort says, hey, we need help. So in March, the Confederacy had sent 3 commissions, which is like groups of people to D.C., to fix the problem with the federal forts. They wanted the federal people, the Union people, out of their areas. Remember, that's what I said. So Lincoln and Seward would not meet with them because this is the problem. If a president ever meets with a leader of a country, that actually gives that country legitimacy. I never understood that when I was growing up, and then there was like some country that wanted to meet with the president. He's like, no, I'm not meeting with them. And I didn't understand that meant he is acknowledging them as a country. So the Confederate States sent representatives to Lincoln to say, hey, we want to talk about this and we want to fix this. And Lincoln said, I'm not meeting with you, because then that would show that he felt the Confederate States of America were their own country. And so he didn't want to do that. Okay, so that was a problem, which then made them mad, as I'm sure you can imagine. Imagine if you wanted to come see me and I said, nah, go away. That would kind of make you a little upset, right? Okay, so Seward sent a message to Fort Sumter that they were going to evacuate on, that they were going to be evacuated. Okay. On April 7th, it was unclear if Lincoln knew anything about it. Okay? So on April 9th, Lincoln says, I got to send supplies to my guys. The letter was on April 7th, not that they were going to evacuate on April 7th. The letter was sent by Seward. Remember, he was almost, never mind. I'm getting you confused with another class. So Seward was the Secretary of State. And so he sent a letter to Fort Sumter saying, hey, get ready to clear out. Fort Sumter said, hey, we need food. And so on the 9th, Lincoln sends a ship out that carries only food. Okay, blankets, stuff like that, supplies, not weapons. He contacted the president of the Confederacy, which was Jefferson Davis. He contacted the person in charge of South Carolina. He told everybody he could tell, hey, it's just going to be supplies. They didn't trust it. They didn't believe it. They shot on things at Fort Sumter. So on April 12th, they bombarded Fort Sumter. The very, I can't remember how many days now. I used to know. 2, 3, 4. I can't remember. You can look it up. I can't remember. I'm sorry. But in all the bombarding of Fort Sumter and the eventual surrender of Fort Sumter, nobody was killed. Nobody. It was very interesting that first battle of the Civil War, the bloodiest war that the United States is ever in, nobody is killed that first battle. Nobody. Okay. So remember, all wars are made up of a lot of battles. We're going to be looking at different battles. There's Gettysburg, there's Antietam, there's First and Second Manassas, there is Fredericksburg and Vicksburg, and there are a lot. Then there's ones that don't like really have names. So like the War in the West, or the Southern War, the Western War, the War on the Frontier. So there's ones that don't like have names necessarily. So we're going to be looking at a lot of those battles, and they are very, very bloody. The casualties are huge during the Civil War. Now, one person once said, oh, there's more Americans killed in the Civil War than all the other wars. Well, yeah, that kind of makes sense, because every single person who was killed in the Civil War was an American. Yeah, because the country was fighting against itself, and whenever the country fights against itself, it's called a Civil War. All right. So I am going to stop now, and we will pick it up tomorrow with our next section. All right. And if I say tomorrow and it's really Friday or Monday or something like that, just go with it, because All right. Secret password for today is Confederacy. Okay. Remember, if you do the secret password, you get 2 extra points on your assignment. And if you tell anybody about the secret password, you will lose 2 points on your assignment. Okay? Secret password, Confederacy. All right. See you later. Bye.